The Run for Justice took its first stride today with the Law Day 5K. Almost 100 showed out despite the rain for a stroll that began at Duluth East High School before taking them down to the Lake Walk. Justice North hosted the event, which also serves as a chance to let anyone know about their nonprofit services.
We serve northeastern Minnesota, providing free civil legal assistance to people who can't afford an attorney. You've got a right to an attorney in criminal matters. You don't in civil matters, and that can include some important stuff like evictions, divorce, child custody cases. And if people can't afford a lawyer, they have to navigate the justice system on their own.
The run helps raise money to directly fund free legal help and grant access to individuals who need help with cases that could include divorce, child custody battles, and more. Other than the 5K, there were prizes, a raffle, and even tours of the mobile justice bus.
That sounds interesting.
Exactly. And now we got Daniel here at the desk, and when we're talking about running for victory, that's you. Yes, that is.